This week on the Crypto Nightly News, we're chatting crypto journalism in the metaverse with former Bloomberg writer and Decential founder Matt Leising, and featuring the musical stylings of this week's Glacer FM artist of the week, August Rayne. That's coming up tonight on the Crypto Nightly News with Christopher German.
We all know the term future of the digital asset compared to last year's term. Welcome to the Crypto Nightly News with Chris German.
Welcome to the Crypto Nightly News for Sunday, November 27th, 2022. I'm your host, Christopher German. I trust your Thanksgiving was happy and calorie-packed and fabulously fun. Thanksgiving was enjoyed by Jennifer and myself and a few hundred of our nearest and dearest friends at the beautiful Lake Quinault Lodge on the shores of Lake Quinault, set on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. We've been haunting the rainforest of late, but as of today, we have officially moved into our new home in Aberdeen, Washington, where I am now officially building the Charted Life Studios and the new flagship operations center for the Charted Life Productions. Aberdeen, home to the likes of Kurt Cobain and the sailing vessel Lady Washington, as seen in the Pirates of the Caribbean, is formerly known as the Hellhole of the Pacific and the Port of Lost Men, thanks to a reputation derived from its historically high murder rate. Now, one may argue that murders from notable serial killer Billy Gohl, who once allegedly hunted for victims here, was a large factor in that unfortunate moniker. But in all likelihood, the murders were in fact deaths from the massively profitable yet unspeakably unsafe logging industry that built this community in its former years. Bad reputations aside, we have decided to make this our home, and we will do our level best to show you the beauty of this unpolished gem situated on Grays Harbor in the quiet Pacific Northwest. And what better place to build a revolution to elevate the world populace to a universal level of prosperity, thanks to the beauty of crypto and decentralized finance, than Aberdeen, Washington. From here, I plan to launch my filmmaking career, write the follow-up to my premiere novel, Whither We Tend, and create award-winning video content telling the stories of America. And while I'm at it, let me also remind you that we are advocating for the financially disenfranchised and promoting an alternative economy that will allow millions a chance at financial freedom, perhaps for the first time in history. I am not a financial advisor of any kind, and I can't recommend strongly enough that this is for educational and informational purposes only. So it's Sunday night, the last of a 4-day weekend for many. And if you were one of the poor, unfortunate souls that had to work on Thanksgiving, please accept my heartfelt thanks for your service. And know that this show is for you. Grab a pair of tall and frosty cervezas from the chill chest and make yourself and your sweetie a sandwich made of turkey and lots of gravy and cranberry leftovers. And crank the volume to max as we regale you with the tales of the cryptoverse, and we wander wide-eyed down the rabbit hole into a world where millionaires are made and fortunes are squandered, all in the fraction of a second, where the smartest are sometimes proven foolish and the foolish sometimes are made into gods. It is an upside-down world that we're looking to unravel for you, so you too may enjoy the benefits of crypto and quit the grind in an effort to make world prosperity a real thing. Thank you for signing on for another half hour of Radio Gold. So without objection, I say we get to it, shall we? Coins were all over the place for the 7-day look back, with Bitcoin flat at 16,568 and ETH just a smidge higher than last week to 1215. Dogecoin was the golden child of the week, up 25% on news of an impending upgrade that was blessed by the godfather of Doge, Tesla, and Twitter CEO Elon Musk. Litecoin, Solana, and Chainlink all saw double-digit gains, with Cosmos, Ethereum Classic, Monero, Bitcoin, Cash, and Quant all putting in moderate growth figures for the week. The rest were either ostensibly flat or negative for the 7-day look back. In NFT land, sales were quite enthusiastic for the week that was, with Bored Ape up 20% in the number 1 spot, with newcomer to the list Valhalla in the number 2 spot. Makers of the NFT-based game Floki Inu offered a preview of its Valhalla play-to-earn metaverse NFT gameplay in a tweet this week, showing strong Viking-style characters roaming the metaverse and much more, saying on their website that the game is pushing the boundaries of blockchain gaming and will introduce aspects of blockchain gaming that have rarely been seen before, including clans of up to 30 people, individual territory raiding, farming of resources, critter collection, and it's all going to be found on blockchain. Going down the list from there was Mutant Ape in the number 3 spot with 23% growth. So Rare, Other Deed, and CryptoPunks in the 3, 4, and 5 spots. Bored Ape Kennel Club rocked the week with 378% growth in sales, along with Gods Unchained in the number 7 spot with 40% growth. Rounding out the list, it was Cellmates at the number 9 spot and A God in the number 10 spot. Now it's time for our main event. I interviewed this gentleman a few weeks back and have been trying to figure out a way to bring this incredibly important interview to you in a way that makes sense, given the maelstrom of news that's been coming out of crypto. And so, since the Thanksgiving holiday has you comatose from turkey and stuffing, I thought I would sober you up a bit with a dose of good old-fashioned American journalism from one of the top journalists covering the crypto space today. Matt Leising has written for notable news media sites such as Bloomberg News, but now has broken free to work on covering the personalities that make up this wildly evolving landscape of crypto. His writing is top-notch, his stories are in-depth, digestible, and like I always say, here filled with news you can use. Please let me turn your attention to a fellow writer and a damn fine journalist working every day to give the fourth estate of crypto a little class and a lot of quality. Here's the interview I shot with Matt Leising.
Today we have a really cool guy that's here to talk to us about some of the work he's doing in crypto. And everybody we have on the show talks about crypto a little bit, but not everybody is a journalist covering crypto. And what's one of my biggest complaints about crypto is that we just don't have enough qualified, talented journalists that are doing what needs to be done to cover this subject of crypto. And today we have a bona fide journalist, somebody that's got a lot more experience in journalism than even I have. And I think he's the guy that he's telling the stories of crypto, and he's doing a phenomenal job. I was reading some of his works on there. On Decential.io is where to go to check it out. But before you do that, let me tell you a little bit about Matt Leising. Matt Leising is the co-founder of Decential, a media company committed to telling the stories of the founders, builders, and visionaries who are creating a new decentralized economy and internet experience. Matt has been a reporter since 2001 and for 17 years worked for Bloomberg News. He began covering crypto in 2015 as one of the first mainstream journalists to understand what the breakthrough of blockchain technology could mean for finance, culture, and the breakthrough of blockchain, and industry in general. Matt has recently released a special edition of a book that he created called Out of the Ether, the amazing story of Ethereum and the $55 million heist that almost destroyed it all. Out of the Ether has been optioned and is in the process of being turned into a documentary series. And before that's going to happen, we want to hear from the man. What about this $55 million heist? Tell me about Decential, and let's get all this out on the table, sir. Welcome to the program, the Crypto Nightly News.
Hey, Chris. Thank you so much. That was such a nice intro. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So you want to know about the heist?
Well, let's talk about the heist first, because obviously you've done a lot of work on that, and then maybe we can segue into Decential.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So this is the story of kind of what got me into my book in the first place. It started as a magazine story while I was still at Bloomberg. It goes back to 2016, and there was one of the first applications on top of the Ethereum blockchain was known as the DAO. And DAO is a big scary term that stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Basically, That is a new way of organizing people that's blockchain based, and it sort of has a flat structure where nobody's really in charge, but everybody's kind of working towards a common goal. And so the DAO, as it was called back then, came about because everyone in Ethereum needed to raise money for the startups that they were all, like everybody had their own idea of like, I want to do this on the blockchain, or I want to do that on the blockchain. And all of those companies and startups needed money. So instead of people going out and kind of doing it all on their own individually, the idea was like, let's create this one big pot of money. And what people will do is they'll put Ether into the treasury of the DAO, and then the people who put in that Ether get DAO tokens. And when a project comes to the DAO and says, hey, we want to build a decentralized exchange, what do you think? The DAO token holders would vote and say, yeah, we like that idea, or no. And if they said yes, then they'd say, okay, and here's, $5 million of Ether, go build your project. So it was like a big sort of decentralized venture capital fund. That was the idea. It was, a good idea. It was a little bit ahead of its time.
But it's one of the examples of how this is more democratization in action with crypto, and,
Yes.
and its founding was really democratic in a lot of ways. But they went off the rails,
absolutely.
did they not?
Absolutely, yeah, and they did. But you're right. It's like you don't have to know a VC fund. You don't have to know a bank. Now you can go kind of to your colleagues and to people in the Web3 space and say, as long as you have a good idea, you might be able to get some money for it. So that's a huge change from how usual startups in the tech space work, right? So they raised $150 million, which was way more money than anyone ever thought that would go into the DAO. It freaked everyone out who made it, and it ended up getting hacked. And when it was hacked, that's the $55 million heist that I speak of. Another great thing about, or a crazy thing about blockchain, is when it was being stolen, everyone could watch it happening live on the blockchain, and there's nothing they could do about it because the bug was in the code was on the blockchain, and the blockchain is mostly immutable, or it takes weeks or maybe months to change a deployed contract like the DAO. So there's basically nothing anyone could do, and they just had to watch all of their money kind of get drained out of the DAO through this bug. So it was a huge moment in early Ethereum. It left a lot of people wondering whether the whole chain was going to survive. There was it sparked off a huge debate in the broader community. It ended up resulting in a hard fork of Ethereum that was also very contentious, and led to a different crypto being created that we now refer to as Ethereum Classic. So if you bring this up to people today, there's still people who get upset about it, and it still is kind of a wound. But the community moved on, and as we know now, Ethereum is the most used blockchain, and it's like what everyone is mostly building on. It's got a huge demand for its block space. So it kind of had this early wobble, but it kind of survived, and I think came out stronger for it.
Well, and I think the value of telling that story too, though, is, we've just come off of the worst October for thievery in crypto ever, with so many people getting ripped off in this whole thing. And it's got a really bad black eye right now on crypto, is just people doing some very nefarious things there. But the thing is that this has happened already, and it weathered the storm. And, that's I think that builds a lot of confidence that, Ethereum and the entire crypto space can really, it can recover. It can do it. It's going to last. That's one of the reasons why people like America, is because we've been down, we've been beaten up, we've been thrown out, and all of a sudden we come back and we survived. And that's one of the things that really proves the longevity of something, is the fact that it can come back from that. Yes?
Yeah, I was just talking to my partner about that today. We're recording this as FTX is kind of going down, and Binance has been reported to be buying FTX, and now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Binance is not going to walk away from the deal. This is affecting the price of Solana, another huge blockchain. And, I was saying to my partner, I'm like, it's amazing how many punches crypto can take and it'll still kind of keep going, because the broader ecosystem is still, I think, healthy. And you look at something like today with all the turmoil with FTX and Binance, et cetera, Bitcoin's down like 16,000. ETH is down to around 1,100. But I don't think anyone in their right mind is saying that these things are going to disappear. So this is there's a very much localized effect here of what's going to happen to FTX. Shareholders and people who have money there, but on the broader perspective, I think crypto is resilient and it's built that way, and so going back to the Dow in 2016 or whatever happens today is happening today or last month. I agree with you. I think that this is kind of par for the course, but in these decentralized systems, they are really built to last, and it's amazing how much punishment they can take and keep on going.
Well, and the book is out of the amazing story of Ethereum, out of the ether, the amazing story of Ethereum, and the $55 million heist that almost destroyed it all. Is it available on Amazon? Can they get it everywhere they want to get it? And because quite frankly, I think I want to encourage people to read this thing because maybe that'll give them the heart to get into crypto when they're afraid and really understand that this stuff can last.
Yeah, you can get it anywhere you get books, and it's in every format you like, Kindle, audiobook, whatever, hard copy. And there's a special edition if anyone's interested. It's only 1,000 copies were ever printed. And it's also something you can turn into an NFT, and you can get that at outoftheether.net.
Well, outoftheether.net's the place to get it. But before we everybody runs away and goes to buy the book, let's talk about Decential and talk to me a little bit about what the stories you're telling there. I was just looking at that website just before we came on air, and it's like you've got some really neat tales that you're telling on there, some really cool inspirational stories.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I mentioned my partner before. His name's Neil Berkeley. He's a documentary filmmaker. He's the person who optioned the book to make into a documentary series in the first place. And that's how we got to know each other, and we were both very much into crypto, and we realize we both tell stories in very similar fashions, even though I'm a writer and he's a filmmaker. And the way we do that is by getting into the characters and making these people human beings and three-dimensional. And so that's how I wrote the book. I really wanted to make these people understandable and relatable, because it's a kind of hard topic. It's not like people I think are a little bit afraid of blockchain because it's not easy to understand. So I knew that I had to tell the story through the characters, and there's so much human drama in the story of how Ethereum was created. And so Neil and I we bonded over that, and we said, we don't think that people are telling these stories the way that they should be. There's some of it out there in the crypto media space, but we really wanted to highlight the people who are building Web3 and the founders and the visionaries, as you mentioned, and what is the reason is because 99 times out of 100, those people are fascinating, crazy, super smart, and weird, and they're coming from all walks of life, and it's great characters for storytellers, and so that's what we've been doing at Decential for the last year, really kind of getting into the backgrounds and telling people, I want to, after you listen to my podcast or after you read a story on Decential, I want you to feel like you know that person a little bit, and maybe that's going to make it easier for you to understand what an NFT is, or how compound finance works and DeFi. And so we're trying to spread adoption by saying, look at these interesting people. Like, people love stories about people, and I think we can bring them in and then teach them along the way through those characters and through the struggles or whatever their personal story happens to be.
Well, and I think it's also it's incredibly important to know these stories, because I think when we look back at these days, these heady days of Web3s rolling out now, and we look back at the history of what's happened with crypto, and this is probably a long time in the future, but when we look back, it is going to be so fascinating to know all the different personalities and all the different tales and all the different, we've got people in Algeria doing this. We've got people in India doing this. We've got people that come from all walks of life, and we're all coming together to build this super democratic financial system out of nothing. And to just think of like the intelligence it's taking to do this, and to think of all the weird and wild people that are doing it just because they have a lark and they just want to do that kind of stuff. And you're telling those tales. And I think it's just such a cool thing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and this wasn't up by design, but one of the things I'm most proud of at Decential is we do have a global reach. I'm working with writers. I've hired writers in London, in Dubai, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and in New York. And so, we're getting a great mix of stories from all over the world. And you're right, people are doing crazy things in crypto all over the planet. And, one of the hottest places right now is in the Middle East, and we're getting some really fascinating stories coming out of there. And so it's so it's an exciting time. A lot is going on, and we're just really it's just so much fun to kind of shed light on these folks that are the people behind the scenes kind of making all this tech a reality.
Well, and I think that's one of the neat stories about crypto too, don't you think? That a lot of these people are rags to riches stories. They're coming from very, very meager beginnings, and they have a dream, and they have a good mind for finance, and they're just, okay, let's just do this thing, and they do it, and they become very, very wealthy, or they become very, very powerful, or they become super, super inspirational to the world. And the fact is that just has never happened in history before. You had to be a Forbes, you had to be a Standard Oil baron, you had to be somebody in major back in the day. You had to be somebody major if you're going to be in finance. And this is a very different way that finance is coming about, and it's just such a fascinating time to be alive.
Yeah, to that point, I just interviewed a guy I've known for a while, Eamon Gunsayer. He was a Cornell professor for a long time, a super smart guy, computer scientist. And then, so he was in on the early days of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then he went out and he founded Avalanche, which is one of the bigger blockchains out there. And Avalanche is worth something around, $5 billion now, based on the coin price that it has. So, this really smart Cornell professor, kind of stepped outside of academia because he had a great idea for a new way of doing a blockchain, and he's probably now a billionaire. If you think if he's the founder and it's worth $5 billion, he's probably got a good chunk of that. And so you're absolutely right. It's an amazing leveler, I guess, for people. And if you hit on the right idea here and make improvements or introduce something that's new, the sky is sort of the limit at this point.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I got into this stuff is it's just such an open landscape right now. We're not going to tame the oceans before, and we're not going to another planet anytime soon. And quite frankly, we've already discovered all the corners of this world, so the days of exploration are over. But this virtual world of crypto is a time when we can really explore. And quite frankly, the limit is only our imagination and what we can come up with. And that's one of the cool stories about this too, is that there's NFTs that are coming out, there's artists that are being formed, there's music that's getting created, there's new financial tools that are being crafted, and all of these things are just being brought up out of the thin air. And it's like, wow, it's just, there's so many cool things going on right now, and you're telling those stories.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it in an abstract sort of sense, this is money is now going through an evolution here. This is a new type of money. It's a new type of value that doesn't need a bank associated with it, doesn't need a government associated with it, and it's a peer-to-peer system. So, that's the value of Bitcoin that started this all off, was all of a sudden now I can send value from me to you anywhere around the world, and no one can stop it. And so people say, well, how can any of this stuff be worth anything? It's just computer code. Well, that never existed before. People were trying to do that for many years, but didn't hit on the right formula until Satoshi Nakamoto did. And so having Bitcoin and being, having this ability to send value outside of any banking rails or government rails is huge, and it's valuable. I don't know how much a Bitcoin should be worth, but I think it definitely has an inherent value for that alone.
Well, perhaps you've already answered this question, and I probably should have started the whole podcast with this question, but what got you into crypto? What do you find is the coolest things about crypto? Why did you go from being a traditional journalist, and why'd you make that jump?
Yeah, so I was at Bloomberg for a long time. My beat kind of evolved into what we called market structure, where it's like, how do markets work or not work? What's the regulation going on? How is Congress trying to change the bond market or whatever? I went through the financial crisis with that, and then covered a lot of the Dodd-Frank reforms to try to fix what happened in the financial crisis. So I had a really good understanding of the network of banks and their customers, like asset managers and hedge funds and insurance companies and all. All of that is just a big network, and they're sending money and securities back and forth and through that network, trillions of dollars a day. So once I finally kind of realized what the what blockchain was all about, and this was Bitcoin at that time, I realized, oh, this is a network as well. What if Wall Street could sort of get onto a network similar to the Bitcoin network and trade and send money around to each other? Like, the efficiencies there would be immense. There were a lot of, so that was the light bulb moment that I had. And so that's why I went to my editor in 2015 and said, hey, I want to start covering blockchain. The joke I say is, well, he's like, well, great, what's blockchain? He had no idea, but it soon, I think I had, it was not super hard to realize this. It's just that not many people were realizing it at the time, but this would have big implications for finance and for other industries. And so that's, still going on to this day. Just the other day, JP Morgan did a live trade on the Polygon blockchain with a couple other banks, sending digitized versions of like Japanese yen and Singapore dollars for digitized versions of Japanese government bonds. And so that's on a public blockchain. So all this stuff is happening, and it just sort of occurred to me, like, this is probably, and I knew already that some people on Wall Street were taking it seriously. It wasn't anything like today, but so it wasn't like I was out on my own here at all. But I just sort of like, it just all clicked for me in that moment when I realized, oh, this is a network and this is a network. They should, I bet there's going to be something happening here.
Well, while I've got you in the seat, let me ask you another question here, because you are a journalist, and quite frankly, you got quite a bit of acumen in that realm. What do you think is it going to take to get? I'm presupposing this. You may disagree with me on this, but I don't think it's getting the respect in the national medias or in the mainstream media. I don't think crypto is getting the respect it deserves. They have shows dedicated to stocks and bonds. They have shows dedicated to all kinds of different finance. But they usually the big stories they talk about crypto is when some dirtbag takes a bunch of money and runs off. But they don't tell the stories of how Google is now taking crypto, and how mom and dad can run a store and do everything in crypto now, and how these are things that are possible and they're coming up and they're going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months. There's going to be some big changes here, and I just don't feel like the journalistic world is really covering this adequately. Am I wrong on that? What do you think about that?
I don't think you're wrong. It's hard to say the media as a monolith, right? Because there's a lot of different layers. There's the mainstream media, which has some good coverage of crypto. I think Bloomberg does a pretty good job, though they tend to be all over the map on stuff. There are more skeptical outlets, like the New York Times has, to me, always felt very skeptical of it and kind of looks at it with a slant eye. The Financial Times out of London is the same, very kind of critical of it, I think. I think Reuters does a good job. They have pretty good crypto coverage. But there is still a lot of, unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but the media is sort of, an arm of capitalism and an arm of the United States kind of system. And like the New York Times to me is sort of an arm of state power, like where they can set the agenda on a lot of things. And so they tend to be quite traditional and tend to like the status quo. And something like blockchain and Web3 is definitely a disruption to the status quo. So it's not super hard to then realize why some of these traditional media companies are looking at it, skeptically. So I think there's a lot of that going on. And then on the other hand, on the trade press side of it, you have a lot of companies that are founded by and financed by firms that have a big stake in the market. So there's not a lot of independence there. You can look at some of the bigger publications and know, if you know who owns them and how that history works, you can kind of see, you have to kind of keep that in mind. So it's, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of middle ground there where there's a media company that doesn't have a direct tie to the industry through its like owners and its benefactors. I'm not going to put Decential out there at all in this way, but we are a tiny little fish here, but we do have that kind of independence, and I hope that there is more of it coming, because it should be treated seriously. It's not going away, and that independent journalism is necessary to keep an eye on it and to keep people honest, and to then also to tell these great stories that are out there, because there's great stories everywhere in this space.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, because that's exactly what I've been railing about on the show for the longest time, is that, we need legitimate journalists who have good storytelling skills to put these ideas together on paper. And from what I've seen of your writing, you are that, and you are doing you're doing the yeoman's effort in journalism for crypto. And I have to thank you for that, sir.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chris. That's really nice to hear. I appreciate it.
Well, you can, if people want to check you out, where's the first place people should go? What should they be watching for you?
Yeah, well, we're on Twitter. We're on Decential Media. We're at Decential Media. You can find us on the web at decential.io, like you said. It's DECENTIAL, so it rhymes with essential. It's kind of like decentralized and essential put together. I'm on Twitter at Matt Leising, and we're doing podcasts. We're out there on all the podcast platforms. So it's called Decent People is one we have out now. That's one that I do. We're expanding with other podcasts coming in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, that pretty much covers it.
Well, I'll be happy to stick all those links in the description of this show, and we'll get you all the promotion that we possibly can with this show, because I love what you're doing, and I thank you for being here today. Matt Leising, I called him Leising before, sorry I screwed your name up. Matt Leising, he is the brain behind all kinds of wonderful things that are coming out here. Decential.io. Check it out. And before you go anywhere else, make sure you check out The Takeaway, because I got a whole bunch of things I want to talk about this particular episode right after this. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this message. I am highly ADHD in my life, which is, in fact, I hated Atari and Nintendo. I contribute all of this stuff to lumiwealth and the amazing education that I have gotten from this service. Well, I can't thank lumiwealth enough for everything that they've done. It's have even a question about whether they should do this. Just look at my story and just look at what I've done.
And so finally, would you recommend lumiwealth's classes to someone else?
I'm doing this every damn day. I love lumiwealth. It's amazing.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
So as you can see, we're in my living room, and from the echo, I'm sure you're hearing that there's not a lot of furniture in here yet, so I've just moved into this place. But I spend a good bit of time bemoaning the shoddy journalism that is evident in the various quote-unquote news sites that cover crypto. Indeed, unless you get your news in crypto from a primary English source, I find it is copied, full of jargon, and ultimately crap. The news sites based abroad take great pride in sounding like a sixth grader describing their Pokemon collection, and what I've tried in earnest to do is help them copy edit their writing and make their reported pieces sound more conversational. I have failed at every turn, and that is why I started this podcast. Not that I'm an expert on everything crypto, but I am an expert on the English language, and I do think I can present a story that is verified, fact-checked, and understandable to the average listener. There is a place for high-tech talk about derivatives, pancake swaps, and computer science, but most people don't understand or care about those things. So who cares if F is going through a fork if you explain the changes they are making to the code? That's not important. I don't read code or care about it, but I do care about energy saving, better returns. And that's what journalism in crypto needs to figure out. Thankfully, we have people like Matt Leising and, of course, our friend Byron Gilliam doing the reporting and writing on crypto. They offer a solid command of the English language, a talent for teasing the news nugget out of a story, and they know how to make it fun and informative to read. I will continue to hold the bad actors in crypto accountable with this podcast, and the pseudo-journalists who are allowing things like FTX to happen, they will eventually be sidelined as the Fourth Estate gets a handle on how to cover crypto. But while we are waiting for CNN to figure out what a Bitcoin is and MSNBC to buy into the idea that crypto isn't a passing fad, you can rest assured that guys like Matt Leising are on the story and doing great work telling the tales of crypto. And that is the takeaway for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show this week, and I want to thank Matt Leising for joining me. You can check out all his stories at Decential.io. Big thanks also goes out to August Rayne and the Glacer FM Artist of the Week. Check out all her music on Glacer FM and Glacer Underground. And tune in every week at 9 p.m. on Sunday for the best damn crypto newscast on the web. I do hope your Thanksgiving holiday was restful and the start of the Christmas season has you filled with joy and happiness. Tune in next week for our Christmas special, where we will have a very special story where you can save money on Christmas gifts by buying them with crypto. That's next week. But for this week, thank you for joining us, and big thanks to the community of Aberdeen, Washington for welcoming us to your shores. Trade safely, my friends, and hit that subscribe button if you would, please. Have yourself a blessed evening.